Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Matt down here in the catacombs again with a breaking news story. 29-year-old singer Katy Perry has declared to Marie Claire magazine that she no longer identifies as a Christian. Now, this may come as something of a shock to our viewers, but I have the quotation right here and I'm going to share it with you. She says, "I don't believe in heaven or hell or an old man sitting on a throne. I believe in a higher power, bigger than me, because that keeps me accountable." That's pretty deep. I mean, she's obviously not particularly religious, but she's so spiritual. And she says, "I'm not a Buddhist, I'm not a Hindu, I'm not a Christian, but I feel like I have a deep connection with God. I pray all the time for self-control, for humility." End quote. Now, I'm not sure what Miss Perry's idea of God would be. She prays to something, but she doesn't believe in anything, but still prays. Good for her. Now, actually, I think that Miss Perry should probably be congratulated for stating the obvious, that she's not a Christian. I think many of us had that impression when she made all the headlines back in 2008 for her song, "I Kissed a Girl." I think it became quite obvious at that point that this is not exactly a daily communicant. However, Miss Perry is the daughter of two Protestant ministers and was raised in a very Christian home. So it's interesting because now she stands out as one of the most degenerate singers in the pop industry. So while it might be fun to sort of make fun of Miss Perry and her statement of the obvious, I think that the bigger issue is that if we, as real Christians, as Catholics, continue to entertain ourselves or allow our children, God forbid, to be entertained by the likes of Miss Perry, we are the problem. And this is a problem that goes back a lot of years. It goes back to the days of Elvis the Pelvis. These people, these young people that were set up by an industry, music and entertainment industry, that pretty much hates everything we as Catholics believe. They've been using and abusing young people for a long time. And we've seen that, pick your favorite star du jour who's involved in abusive behavior and sex and drugs and so forth, whether it's Britney Spears or now Katy Perry or Madonna or any of the others. They are not, at the end of the day, I would argue, truly the problem. The problem is those of us who are consuming this stuff, this material, this entertainment, seem to have a real disconnect between the power and the influence that the industry has, the entertainment industry has, over our children. And so whether we're homeschoolers or traditional Catholics or whatever it might be, for whatever reason, we're able to separate the influence and the power of this industry over our children with what we claim to be as conservatives or as traditional Catholics. And it's a very strange disconnect because this, Miss Perry, Katy Perry, has a tremendous amount of influence, much more influence than most parents have, than priests have. So you can, as a traditionalist, you can attend the traditional Latin Mass for a month of Sundays. But if from Monday through Sunday or through Saturday night, your children are being entertained by the likes of Katy Perry, you don't have a prayer, you don't have a chance of overcoming the influence that she wields. And I don't mean to pick on Miss Carey for the moment, or Miss Perry, whatever her name is. Any of them, pick your favorite one. The industry itself, the entertainment itself, is completely antithetical to everything that we believe. So the question is, why do we continue to entertain ourselves with the fare of people and an industry that hates everything we believe? It would be tantamount to the early Christians, at the beginnings of our church. They're in the catacombs, they're hiding out in the streets of Rome, and they're persecuted, they're being martyred. And yet on Friday night, they say, hey, there's a pretty good show over at the Coliseum tonight. They're going to be waxing a few Christians. And we head on over there and entertain ourselves. I mean, really, it's just that ridiculous. It's that insane. We have had a complete disconnect in rational thought when it comes to entertainment. We'll entertain ourselves with whatever comes along. And for whatever reason, we think that if we go to Latin Masses or if we homeschool, that this influence is not going to be manifested upon our children. And then we're shocked, we're horrified when little Johnny and Susie turn 17, 18, 19 years old and completely abandon everything that their family, their parents, their mother and father held sacred for the first 16, 17 years of their lives. Why is that? Because you can require your children to learn the Baltimore Catechism all day long, but if you don't instill in them what it is that threatens those beliefs or those catechism ideas that they're learning about their faith in the entertainment industry, you're not giving your child a chance in hell, pardon me, of actually retaining belief and actually making and owning those ideas of the Catholic faith permanently and forever. Because they're being entertained 24/7 by people who hate what we believe. It seems like common sense. And yet, for whatever reason, whether we're brainwashed or whether we're, like I say, disconnected in some way, we go on and on doing it. And no one wants to talk about the problem, the cultural threat, which should be the top of the list. It's much more powerful what Miss Perry is doing and what Pink is doing and Lady Gaga and all the rest, what they're doing every day, and the music they're pumping into our children's heads and minds through the earbuds and through the iPods and everything else. That's a 24/7 indoctrination lesson that they're getting every single week. And we can't possibly, as parents, compete with that. And if we allow that to go on with our children, in the end, we're going to lose. It's just common sense. So we're down here in the catacombs, figuratively. But in essence and in reality, that's where we are. Those who are trying to follow Christ in a completely Christophobic world are literally in a catacomb where they should be. And so when it comes to the culture question, it seems to me that that should top, again, we should top the list of our concerns. And it's not something, it's really not rocket science. There's any number of ways of confronting this and doing something. I mean, you can't, I think one of the main reasons that so many parents are loath to say anything about, the question of music, for example, is because they feel like, well, we're saying no to everything. And we can't say no to their music. Well, you know what? Yes, you can. Yes, you can, and you have to, and you must. We as parents must take a stand. Think about the stand that was taken back in the 60s when all of this got started, late 50s through the 60s. When all this got started, you had Catholic priests, you had Jewish rabbis, you had Protestant ministers leading youth groups out in the streets, burning the Beatles records, for example. I mean, the Beatles, good gracious, compared to what's happening now, Gaga and Pink and Perry and all these people. The Beatles were bubblegum music compared to that, but they were avant-garde, and in a sense, they were much more idealistic revolutionaries than these poor creatures who we see today. But in any case, look back on the stand that was taken early on by people with a solid Christian sense, a sensus catholicus, against the entertainment that was brought out, which is completely Christophobic, and which ran roughshod over what was left of a Christian society. Why have we abandoned that? Why are more parents not talking about this? Why are priests, even solid tradition-minded priests, so loath to stand in the pulpit and address the issue that every young person in the church who still bothers to show up in the church is dealing with? What they're attracted to culturally, their music, their movies, what's going on the internet. Why are we so afraid to address this when it is the 900-pound gorilla in the room? It's the reason we've lost our Catholic identity, because we're entertaining ourselves with the fare of the pagans, of those who are anything but Christian, of those who are Christophobic, of those like Katy Perry, who are now publicly declaring their Christophobia, the fact that they reject Christianity. Publicly declaring that. This is after, several years after, in this case, she made lesbianism vogue for the 10 and 15 and 12, 16, 18, 12-year-old children, young people, through her music. So we see this progression. We see this, the impact that the culture, the music is having, and unless we as Catholic parents in a Catholic community are willing to stand up and take a stand, I don't see anything good coming from this. I don't see victory. I don't see us forming a serious Catholic counter-revolution unless we can finally dig deep down inside of ourselves, stand up, and take a stand against the people who have our children's ears, the people in media, the people in the music industry. If we can't do that, we've lost. And it's happening again and again and again with people all across the world. Folks, good folks who are homeschooling who are driving 45 minutes to get to a traditional Latin Mass, and they don't realize when they're driving to Mass, little Billy and Susie in the back seat with the iPods going are undermining and they're educating themselves in a way that's completely antithetical to everything that we stand for. Seems like it's a pretty easy thing to at least address and come up with a solution for, as long as we recognize the problem. And I guess at this point, we're having trouble recognizing the problem. Katy Perry isn't the problem. She's just another one that they've used to tantalize and to lead our children away from everything that's meaningful to us as Catholics. So don't blame her. We gotta look at ourselves. Why have we become so incapable of taking a stand when it matters most with our children? Something to think about. We'll have more on this in the Remnant Underground, because I think it really is the most important thing. I think it's more important in a sense even than the liturgical question. The cultural question is the most important issue of the day, and we need to realize that. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.